Greetings, Duelists, and welcome to another video. So North America MWCQ is this weekend. I already talked about like the deck of choice, like a lot of theory behind like why would I choose the deck that I would chosen, and the tech cards. And like the deck concept and the deck ideas that I would have been playing, and like things to look out for when it comes to the format. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about 3 cards that I did highly considered when it comes to testing. These are very unorthodox cards that people are not playing at all, or if they are playing it, it's not really commonly played. Some of them are not even really that known, and I kind of wanted to like bring up how are these cards really relevant for the current format, how good these cards could be, and maybe who knows, maybe it sparks an idea for you if you're playing a specific strategy and you're going to play this weekend. But without further ado, let's begin. Then the first card I'm going to talk about is called Mistaken Arrest. This card is very very old. Well, not super old, but it came out in like 2015. So the card reads, until the end of your next turn after this card resolves, neither player can add cards from their deck to their hand except by drawing them. So essentially what this means is like it's a hard lock for both players from adding cards in general. And it's a lingering effect that lasts until the end of your next turn. So if you are turn player and you decide to activate it, turn 0, 1, and 2, or 2, 1, 2, and 3 are going to be those 3 turns where you're both going to be locked onto this. If you flip it on your opponent's turn, then it will just be like your opponent's turn and then your turn. Why am I bringing up this card? If you look at the current format and you look at the more popular strategies there are in the game, a lot of decks just lose to this. Like, if you go first against Kashtira and you activate this, no Prosperity, no Planet, no Unicorn, no Fenrir, like, you're pretty much shutting down like a quarter of their deck. Like right then and there. Against Dragon Link, no Chaos Space, no White Dragon, Black Dragon, no Striker Dragon, no Dragoonity Knight, no Magnamut unless you grab from the graveyard specifically. Yeah, like against the Life Twin Runic Sprite deck is pretty much a wrap. Like, no Hugin, no Blue, no Jet, no what's the word? A Sunny Snitch. If they're playing that, if they're playing the Fur Hire engine, you shut down their Fossil Digs, their Rex. Yeah. It Now you have to think about like what deck can play this, because this also locks you too. So if you're playing a strategy similar to those, you should be wary of this card. I think the perfect deck for this card is Labyrinth. I think if you're playing a deck like Labyrinth, or playing a deck like a very slow paced deck that doesn't rely on adding too much, you can play this card easily. If you're playing Branded and you resolved already like Aluber, for example, and you resolved like the ad for Branded Loss or stuff like that, you can flip this card and like you're pretty much shutting down your opponent. Like if you're playing like something like Vanquish Soul and you resolve Raisin and Mad Love, you can flip this, and now what you can do is just like draw cards with Borgar just to keep up with card advantage. Take note that this prevents players from adding cards except for drawing them. So if you have like heavy border and you want to draw that way, you can keep doing that, and it doesn't prevent you from doing that at all. But yeah, the reason I bring up this card and not Drawing Lovebird is because Drawing Lovebird is a lot easier to stop. Drawing Lovebird is more telegraphed. People can just play around it. But if you already have a solidified board and you flip this against your opponent, or you just do your end board and then you activate this, your opponent cannot stop it. Like it's pretty much a wrap. Your opponent has to play under this, and they have to deal with your board, or whatever cards you have. So I highly recommend this card if your deck can play it. I think this card will steal a lot of games if you're playing this, depending on what deck you're playing. The second card I want to talk about also has Mistaken in the name, but it's not as common. I don't think people have ever played this at all, like in many years. This card came out in, I think, was 2016. It was a little bit after a Mistaken Arrest. The card I'm talking about is called Mistaken Accusation. So what does the Mistaken Accusation do? This card says, if your opponent controls more total cards in their hand and board and field than you do, you target one face-up card on the field, except for the specific targeted card that you targeted. No players can activate cards or effects of the same card you targeted it for the rest of the duel. Why am I bringing this up? Okay, so right now we're in a game where like the following turns matter and the following cards that you use matter. So let's say, for example, you're playing against Kashtira and your opponent Arise Heart, Shangri-Ira, and summons Fenrir on you, for example. By that logic, if they resolved everything, they pretty much have like more card advantage than you do because they have more cards on the board. Something you can do is you can activate this. You target their Kashtira Fenrir, and for the rest of the duel, or for the rest of that game, nobody can activate Kashtira Fenrir. So if you deal with your opponent's board and you get rid of it, your opponent can no longer activate Fenrir, which means they have to worry about what other cards can they do on the crackback if you end up like breaking their board. That's just one example. One other example I can give you is, let's say you're playing against Dragon Link and the guy summoned Bestial Magnamut on you. You can activate Mistaken Accusation, target Bestial Magnamut, and for the rest of the game, he can no longer do Bestial Magnamut on you. So they cannot like start recouping advantage again with that card. There are some decks that just hard loses to this. Sky Striker, for example, you target their Kagari with this. They no longer have more copies of Kagari, or at least they cannot use more copies of Kagari. If by some random instances you target their Rei, they cannot use Rei. If you target their Shizuku, they cannot no longer use Shizuku on the following turns. So you take away their card advantage. If for some reason you're playing against Purely, since you already know they go second, and they end up summoning like the Purely monsters, and for some reason they have more cards than you do, you target one of their Purely monsters, and sometimes that deck is known for trying to trigger the regular Purely multiple times in the turn. So you shutting them down from using Purely for the rest of the game is really strong. But yeah, if you play against the Rika Sun Avalon deck, they try to summon the Sunseed, or the Dryas rather. You can do this, stop that. Um, if they summon like the Rika Princess on you, you can activate this, target that. If they have Rika Con, you can target their Rika Con with this. And if you get rid of the first Con, they cannot activate a follow-up one for the next turn. Like they're pretty much out of that card. Um, you can actually flip this against cards that they're activating on the spot. Like so, for example, they activate like Rika Glamour. You can flip this, target the Rika Glamour. They can no longer activate that card for the rest of the duel. It's a very, very, very skill intensive card. Um, I guess another really good example is Labyrinth. You can target the Welcome Labyrinth and the Big Welcome Labyrinth. Against Big Welcome Labyrinth, this card is really, really strong because if you activate it on the field effect and you chain this, they cannot use the graveyard effect either. Like they can no longer use the graveyard effect. Same with the other Welcome Labyrinth. So yeah, I guess those are like all good examples. But yeah, this card is just really, really good in a game, in a format like this one, where it's very, very tempo based. It's not good against every deck. You have to be very, very smart on how you play this card. You have to be very, very crafty and creative with how you play this card as well. But just having a card that makes it so your opponent no longer can activate a card for the rest of the game, I think it's worth mentioning, just because nobody would be prepared for this if you do flip this on them. But yeah, that's the second card I wanted to talk about. The third card I want to talk about, I don't have 3 copies of it, I'm missing one. It's called Sales Ban. So what does Sales Ban do? You declare one card name. For the rest of this turn, your opponent cannot activate cards with the declared card name. However, for the rest of the duel, you cannot activate cards with the declared card name. Why am I bringing up this card? Okay, so if you think about it, this card is essentially like in a lesser term, like Prohibition. This is one of those cards where you can be really, really good depending on your game, depending on your matchup, depending on what your opponent is playing, and depending if you go first or second. If you go first, you call out a hand trap that you just don't want to see, and you think you can combo off, and then you don't have to worry about that card. Like, I'll give an example. You're playing Branded and you don't want to deal with Ash Blossom because of Branded Fusion. You just activate Sales Ban and you no longer have to worry about Ash Blossom. Take note that if you do activate that, you cannot Ash Blossom your opponent for the rest of the game. But that's just one really good example. Let's say you're going second and you're playing a Sprite opponent and your opponent has Sprite Smashers set and you don't want to deal with that. You activate Sales Ban, you call Sprite Smashers, and then you can pretty much you blank out a card from your opponent with this card. I feel like this card was really, really important to talk about because people are just playing and citing cards to do 1-for-1 trades with your opponent, and I feel like this card is really, really good if you want to do that. If there's a specific card your opponent is playing that you know that you're struggling against, or a card that you know that your opponent can use to stop you, you just flip this card and either make your opponent force the card to activate it or just blanket the card during the turn. And that could just be enough for you to win the duel. Like, yeah, like if you're playing like a going second strategy, like Purity for example, or like Sky Striker, or like something like that, I really, really recommend you playing this card. If you're playing a deck like Branded and you're trying to like play tech cards like Crossout Designator, some cards that you just don't want your opponent to be using against you. Um, this is a really good choice because not only does it deal with Ash Blossom specifically, but if you draw it like as your sixth card and your opponent has already established a board, you can use it against them, just to stop whatever they have against you as well. Um, yeah, um, those are all the explanation. Those are all the tech cards that I have for now. Um, like I really feel like, um, if you like are going to an event like the North American WCQ, you should try to find as many cards that have very versatile utility as possible, because even though we do have some more popular decks in the format, this it's already been proven that anything can win this format. Player knowledge is very important, um, like for the current format that we're in, and just knowing is half the battle. But yeah, that's it from me. Keep practicing and keep dueling.